No. Rhodri.
Is there anything that Lionel Messi is better than you at?
It's opinions. I respect your opinions. Maybe in your opinion Messi is better than me, but in my mind I'm better than him.
I do it again.
Add it up, bankroll, euro, peso, add it up, I'm just doing me, everything is on me, oh you matter what, add it up, bankroll, euro, peso, add it up, I'm just doing me, everything is on me, oh you matter what, told her if it's all me, everything is on me, gon' back it up, matter what, told you I'ma do me, why you hating on me, it's not adding up. Do roll like a Mack truck, country heart, I might cop a farm and go act up. Lot of scars, I was cold hearted, now I'm back up. Keep it real, I do this once a month, I don't rap much. I just hit the money and go stack up. Only buy cars, take it tatted up. All that other bull, it don't matter much. You only climb me, I put the ladders up. No fault, I done doubled up on the workload. I think I fell in love with the bankroll. Pray up, get money, then we lay low. Add it up.
Yes, guys, I'm Si. Welcome to A's Podcast Nation. Welcome to Rhodri Giggs on Football. Rodders will be back over in a minute. He's had a bump in his car, mates and girls and boys. So he's just been delayed. He is coming, though. So we'll talk about some stuff until he's here. So if you've got any questions, please do get them in because I'm on my own, innit? So, ask the questions and I'll give you my honest opinions, as always. Lots to discuss. We know this. There's been a busy week. The Championship's been awesome. Premier League's been awesome. FA Cup was awesome on the weekend. Lots and lots going on. Lots and lots to discuss. With regards to our Super 6 Prediction League, it's been a very interesting week. We've had 2 rounds since last week. Nicky Benson won the weekend round, only just beating Andy Campbell and Jeff Stelling with a close golden goal. And then Mike Flint won the midweek round. We're getting close to the end of the season now. So how is my battle with Rodders going? I scored 12 over the 2 rounds this week. Rhodri managed 17. So although he's got a little bit closer this week, I'm still a nice whopping 23 points ahead, which means I think I've got 3-4-2. He's got 3-1-9. Next round is Saturday at 3 o'clock. So be sure to get your predictions and whatnot in, so that we can get it all sorted. See who's the best. I think me and Rhodri, we know that already. We know who's the greater. But please do get your questions in, particularly in this first part of the show. We're going to talk, I think we'll talk about the Championship to start, because I think Rhodri is a bit more clued up on like the Premier League and stuff. He does watch the Championship, but not as closely as he watches the Championship. So I don't mind talking about Cardiff City, because they have to massive, a soaring heights of 18th place at the moment on 49 points. They've dragged Rotherham right down into it as well, which was a bit of karma, I think, let's be honest, because it was a bit of a farce a few weeks ago when that game was abandoned. But I said last week that I felt like Wigan, even though they were bottom of the league, were hitting some good form. And I actually thought that they might get out of that relegation battle. They've now won 2 on the bounce, which is so massive. They're up to 40. You've got Blackpool just above, but they did pick up a win. They're on 41. Reading 43, or haven't won a game for 5. Huddersfield haven't won in 3. And then Rotherham, who haven't won in 5, just lost to Cardiff as well. QPR finally got a victory, so they've only won 1 in 4. Cardiff have picked up 7 points in the last 3 games, which has taken them up to 18th. I think that's probably about as high as it goes. And I think, in reality, Cardiff are probably safe now. They only need a point. But you got to get that point nice and early, take the pressure off. And obviously, I think they play Huddersfield next, which I'll double check that now, but I'm pretty sure that's the next fixture, which obviously adds a bit of thing, because if Cardiff can get a victory on at home to Huddersfield, not only does it make Cardiff City safe, but it also puts Huddersfield right in trouble, because if they lose to Cardiff and Reading or Blackpool, or even if Wigan were to pick up a victory, they'd be 1 point behind Huddersfield. Like, Huddersfield will be in real trouble, which is interesting, isn't it? Because I believe earlier in the season Huddersfield were really kind of looking well and truly safe, and they are now struggling. Listen, Cardiff City in the last 3 games, in my opinion, have been fantastic. I want to talk about the squad a little bit and what the club needs to do going forward. But what I will say first and foremost is, sorry, Cabba needs to not take penalties. I love him. He's my favourite Cardiff player, but he needs to not take penalties anymore. He's had a couple of goals. Luckily, hasn't really cost us, but he's got to get off those penalties. If Joe Rolls is on the pitch, I'm sure he's taken penalties before. There's people who can take them. He's had his chance, shall we say. But as a player, I am really hopeful that Sorry Cabba is there next year for Cardiff. And this kind of takes me into what I want to discuss with Cardiff. Is the thing is, now once we get to that point and safety is guaranteed, it's then up to the board. The board have to back if the manager is their guy, they got to back him. They've got to find a way to give him money. They've got to find a way to allow him to get the players that he wants to build his team. Because a lot of these players were players that were already there. So then they're not his guys. We have got to make some decisions to make. We've got to decide. We've got to make a choice of some of these young players. Do they need to go? Do they need to go on loan? Or do we need to cut and just say, right, then, maybe they're not good enough for what we're trying to achieve at this moment? It's harsh, but you've got to be harsh. Because one thing I was discussing with a friend of mine yesterday is, if you keep being in a relegation battle season after season, eventually you will go down. And you look at Everton now, last couple of seasons, they have got out in the last week or two of the season. And I think this season's probably going to be too much for them. I think the teams around them are slowly getting it together. They're not. They're getting worse. And I've got a feeling Everton might go down, which, a club the size of Everton to get relegated is mental. But it is what it is. No one's got a divine right to stay up. And in my opinion, if Cardiff don't get it right this summer, there's a big chance that they will go down next year. They have to get it right. So decisions have got to be made. In my opinion, I think Ruben Corwell needs to go on loan for a season, and he needs to go somewhere. They need to be very selective over where they send him. Whether if that means he's got to drop down to League One, but he plays every week, that's okay. Preferably, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, maybe, he's got the most important thing is he plays week in, week out. He needs to play first team football. He's not getting that Cardiff at the moment. And the danger is that if he just keeps playing a few minutes here, a few minutes there, he's not benefiting the club. It's not benefiting him. And we want him to make it. He's clearly a talent. He's clearly, the Wales have got eyes on him. Cardiff rate him highly. So you've got to find a way for him to play. If he's not going to play for the first team in Cardiff, he's got to go out on loan. Cannot just keep giving him a few minutes here and there. Then you've got the fates of the likes of Mark Harris, Joel Bagan, Tom Sang, Gavin White, Dylan Phillips, Kieran Evans. They've decisions to be made. And this is where the board comes in, because the board have got to decide, is Lamouchi their guy? If he's their guy, then they have to back him. My worry is that at the back of their mind, they think that he's going to be gone by Christmas or January, which is why they just don't want to back him. And then you're just going round and round and round, making the same mistakes over and over again. We got quite a few loan players. We got some players out of contract. I like what Lamouchi's done with Sol Bamba alongside him. I think I really like. A lot of people think like, or generally in football, like the kind of 5 at the back is viewed as negative, but I actually think what it's done for Cardiff is it's set them up solid, and it's actually benefited them going forward. I think Connor Wickham was a really good signing, and I think he's helped get the best out of Sorry Cabba and probably a few others as well. So there's so many positives since he's taken over generally, but Cardiff got some big decisions to make. They've got to back that manager. Will they? That's another story, isn't it? That's another story. Hopefully we'll be able to get Mehmet Dalman on again in the summer as well, so we can put some questions to him. He tends to come on each year in the break with us, and he never shies away from questions. And I know, like the last time he came on, people were moaning, but they moan afterwards. If you want to ask him a question, like it's all over social media that he's going to be on. He's on for like an hour and a half, and you can ask anything. And as long as it's not offensive, I will ask him the question and he will answer it. And if he doesn't answer it, I'll press him a little bit. As long as it's not offensive and it's respectful, I'll put it to him. He's never asked me not to ask about anything. He's never asked me to, I gave him the option the first time he came on if he wanted to do a pre-record or a live. I gave him the option to have the questions beforehand, and he turned both down. And ever since, we've always done it live, and just people can ask what they want as long as it's respectful. So if you're going to moan afterwards that he didn't ask this and didn't ask that, that's what it is, isn't it? But you can't moan if you don't ask the questions, as far as I'm concerned. But look, that's not to say I think that he doesn't deserve criticism, because I think he does. I think they all do. I think Cardiff for the last probably 5 years has been absolute shambolic, the way it's been run in every facet. Every decision they've made regarding managers, in the transfer market, off the pitch, everything has been absolute shambolic. It's shambolic that the transfer committee is made up of people outside of the manager. No one really who's football based and a football person. I think that's ridiculous. But that's another conversation for another day. In regards to the top of the championship, I finding it fascinating. Obviously, Sheffield United now guaranteed to get promoted. Congratulations to them. Looked like maybe Luton or Middlesbrough were going to chase them down for a bit, but they got it together. They've won 4 of the last 5. A nice little run. So, good. Congratulations to them. I think them and Burnley have overall been the best 2 teams in the league. Even though Michael Carrick and Middlesbrough has done a tremendous job, and Luton have been outstanding again. I think looking at the table, I think Luton and Middlesbrough are there in the playoffs. I'd be very shocked if they were not to make it. Yeah, Luton are guaranteed anyway, by the looks of it. Pretty much. Same as Middlesbrough. And then I think it comes down to who can pick up the results. You've got Millwall have lost 3 of the last 4 they played tonight. Coventry unbeaten in 5. Bad that Coventry are up there after the start they had. It's crazy. So I kind of hope Coventry get there. Who else have we got? Sunderland. They haven't unbeaten in 5 again. Blackburn all of a sudden just fell off the edge of a cliff, drew 4 on the bounce, and then lost the last game. Looks like they're hitting bad form at the wrong time. And like with Cardiff, going back quickly to Cardiff, I think maybe it's time to accept that some of the younger players might not be good enough. And if there's got to be a choice of, are they good enough, or are they just not good enough to start every week? And then if they're not good enough, then unfortunately you've probably got to move them on. If they're not good enough to start every week, but they can contribute, then it's a case of, right, would they be better playing week in, week out on loan? Or can they be a good member of the squad for when we get injuries, when we need to change games? And I think you've got to use that loan market. That I know there's a couple of really highly rated Premier League players who will be out on loan next year. We've got to be getting there early and get those deals done before other teams come in and you've got the teams coming down who've got more money, blah blah blah. So you've got to work your magic. You've got to use the manager's got to use his contacts, and you've got to get these deals over the line nice and early. Be interesting end of the season. As far as the playoffs go, I think it's Luton, Middlesbrough, Coventry, and Sunderland. They would be my guess at the moment. I base a lot of that based on form. Yeah, Sunderland and Coventry are the two which are hitting form at the right time. Luton and Middlesbrough being the two with the cushion. And I got to say, like those four in the actual playoffs, it's going to be so tight. Like Luton have got the experience now over the last couple of seasons of being there or thereabouts. Will they then be able to finally get it over the line? I'd like to think so. I hope so for their sake. I like Luton. Michael Carrick's done an awesome job. He's turned Middlesbrough around. He's changed the way they play. You wouldn't put it past him to carry on that and go and do it. Sunderland, straight up. If they manage it, can't fault them. But it's very, very difficult to do it. But I guess we'll see how they see how it goes, as it were. We're going to talk about the Premier League with Rodders in a minute. So let's talk about the FA Cup from the weekend. You had the two semi-finals. First and foremost, you had Sheffield United versus Man City. Look, I thought Sheffield United did a pretty good job of competing against what is, in my opinion, the best team in the world at the moment. I don't buy into this thing of like they're the greatest of all time, just like I did with Liverpool. I don't think it's so difficult to substantiate that and kind of measure it. I do think on form and at the moment and squad depth, nobody in the world competes with Man City at the moment in terms of what they can bring off the bench, the way they play, the tactics, everything like that. It's all like a perfect storm. So the Sheffield United game, I thought Sheffield United did okay. They conceded goals at terrible times. Like they conceded a penalty just before half time. And then you're thinking, right, if they can just keep it to 1-0 for as long as possible till the last 10 minutes and then have a real go. And then around about the hour mark, they conceded 2 more quick goals. And once that second goal has gone in, it's all over. But look, Man City, their team is unreal. But no matter who plays, they play the same way. And what I found and have found fascinating over this season is they've changed the way they've played about 3 times over the season. And at the moment, they're in a period where they're going a bit more direct and they're playing up to Haaland's feet. And he's so strong. He's holding off players. And then Grealish and Mahrez or Grealish and De Bruyne are playing off him like a traditional old school centre forward. And it's Haaland is a joy to watch, and De Bruyne. But Haaland, for me, I love watching him, and he's got a bit of shithousery around him as well, which I like a lot. But he's just an incredible player, an incredible finisher. He's strong, he's big, he's good in the air, he's quick. Like he is just one of them players who seems to have everything. And, he'll hit 50 goals. I think he's on 49 in all competitions at the moment, which is an incredible stat. But they've got, even when they rested a few players against Sheffield United, and you've got, they moved Akanji to the middle, and they played Gomez and Alvarez played off the left, and Gundogan played on the right. They've got the ability to just move people around. And still, they play the same way with the same quality. And I think that is so beneficial to any team that no matter which personnel you put in the positions, you're able to play the same way. It doesn't disrupt anything. It doesn't disrupt how the team plays. You look at the way United have capitulated against Spurs and Seville, and a lot of that is down to when they make subs and they bring in those second string players. Everyone plays differently. They can't keep up the same intensity, the same quality. And I think that goes for most teams. Like, you know, even Liverpool, it begrudges me to say, who've struggled this year. I think some of their problems have been around the fact that their reserve team players, or they're not reserve team, their reserve players aren't able to keep up the same quality and intensity as the first choice players. And they've got a problem with all their players kind of aging at the same time, which you could say is down to the, you know, the management of the club and blah, blah, blah. But ultimately it's a thing. Brighton United played Sunday. I thought Brighton was outstanding. I really thought Casido, I can't believe Casido is 20. Like, and he's only not long turned 20. Like, that is mental to me, how good he is for a 20-year-old. I thought McAllister was pretty good, but just Casido is just unreal. And I would think that all of the top, sort of the traditional top clubs in the Premier League will be after them. And Brighton have got a choice to make, really. Like, do they keep their traditional model of they find these players, they then churn them, you know, they make a profit on them, and then they find someone else, and then they go again, and they do keep finding these players? Or do they say, no, we're keeping these players now, and we're going to try and get in the Champions League? They've still got a good chance of getting there as well, although that result yesterday probably didn't help, or Wednesday was it? Didn't help, but ultimately they have got a choice to make. And the interesting thing with Brighton is the law of probability, just the law of averages, means that at some point they won't be able to find another gem. So they've done it time and time again, haven't they? And you know, you've got to give them credit for that. But the law of averages says that at some point one of the midfielders they bring in won't be as good as Casido and McAllister and Cucurella, who came before that, and the other players that came before that. So they're going to have a choice to make, because I think, for instance, United are already sniffing around Evan Ferguson. They need a striker. You've got Arsenal tried to sign Casido and will be back in for him. I wouldn't be surprised if United are back in would be in for him. Man City. And then you go outside the Premier League, there'll be clubs sniffing around. You've got Webster's good. You've got Solly March. You've got Mitoma is probably, before the semi-final, was on form as probably one of the best wingers in European football, on form. And they've got to decide, do we just keep churning out the profit and bring, because they get big money for all three, like for Mitoma, they get big money for him. They'd get big money for Caicedo. They get huge money for Caicedo because he signed a new contract. They'd get big money for McAllister. And same for Evan Ferguson. They'd get decent money because of his age and stuff. And because I'm not sure if he's a homegrown player as well. So they probably, you know, you're looking at even more again. So like Brighton do have a decision to make. And De Zerbi, what a manager. Like, to me, if Arsenal don't win the league, which looks like they are bottling that completely, I think De Zerbi's got to be in with a shout of being manager of them. He's got to at least be in the conversation for manager of the year. And the reason I say that is Brighton were flying and they lost Graham Potter, their manager. They lost Cucurella and the coaching staff, I believe. So not only did they had to replace their manager, replace the players, and they not only did that, but they got better. They changed the way they played. They became more intense. And the way they press is as good as anything in the league. The football they play is as good as anyone in the league. They have absolutely taken apart some of the biggest names in British football, in the Premier League this season on multiple occasions. They took Liverpool apart twice in short succession. I thought they were the better side against United by not a massive way, but they were. I thought they were clearly the better side. I thought United managed the game as opposed to Brighton played the game to win. United maybe had a bit more experience in terms of managing the game and the nerves and the occasion. So it's going to be super interesting how Brighton go about their summer. And look, next year is going to be so difficult in the Premier League because you've got Arsenal. They're going to spend money. They're going to be back in the Champions League. You've got Man City, who can always strengthen when they do well. So they're going to bring in a couple of players. Newcastle have a bottomless pit. If they get Champions League football, they're going to spend money big. United will spend money, especially if they get sold to Qatar, which we might find out over the weekend. That's going to be massive. You've got Spurs. Villa have got in my opinion, one of the best managers in the league. They're flying. If they can get a win against United on Sunday, Villa are in the top 4 conversation, like this year. The one advantage is United have got a couple of games in hand over their rivals. So you'd think they'd be safe. But I mean, if Villa can get a win on Sunday, that does open it up. Brighton the same. Brighton have got 3 games in hand over Spurs in 5th, and they're only 5 points behind. So, I mean, if they win those 3 games in hand, they're up to 58 points, which takes them within 2 points of United. But United obviously got 2 games as well. It is incredibly tight in that. Look, and Liverpool will not be as bad as they've been this year. Chelsea will not be as bad as they've been this year. West Ham, if they stay up, will not be as bad as they've been this year. Leicester, Everton, if they can find a way to stay up, will not be as bad as they've been this year. So that this summer in the Premier League is going to be mad. And if Brighton sell like the spine of the spine of that midfield, because they stick to this model of finding a bargain, letting them make a name for themselves, and then selling them for big money, that will eventually not work. It's just probability and averages. They'll find it, like they'll get a dud or someone who doesn't quite come off or doesn't fit the system. It's just the law of averages. It's just the way it goes. Let's look at the relegation zone in the Premier League. A great point by Will there. He says, until Manchester City win the Champions League, they cannot be even considered in the conversation for the greatest team ever, even with all their recent domestic success. So let me put a question to you, Will, and everyone else. I saw Jamie Carragher kind of saying this week that kind of Pep, who was it, Arrigo Sacchi, and a couple of other managers will always be rated higher than Alex Ferguson because they basically have changed the way football is viewed, the trophies they've won, but also they've changed the way football is played from grassroots level up to professional. Now, to me, I think that's bullshit. And the reason I agree with Gary, what Gary Neville said was that Fergie changed the way squads were managed. He what other manager went and had 4 strikers who he rotated through to play FA Cup games and League Cup games. He was also the first manager to try like a 4-3-3 formation in Europe. It didn't work. And actually, Mourinho was probably the one who made it work the best in the Premier League. But Fergie tried it. And I just don't think you can compare the two. And Man City, like, they're not the greatest team that's ever been. They are the best team in the world at the moment, but they are not the greatest. And the man himself is here. How are you, my friend? You good?
Yeah, mate, you all right?
Yes, buddy. Is your motor okay?
Just a shock of it, you know.
Yeah.
It was like, you know, because you're just like driving down the road and you don't expect someone to stop in the middle of the road to let someone out to give way when there's no one in front of them. But he did. And I stopped, but the guy behind me didn't, straight into the back of me. My back's a bit. Oh, now you know. Before I was fine, but now I think. Oh. But his vans was dented, and my boots dented, and we smashed my light. My bumper's knackered, so.
Yeah, had to get it sorted, mate. It's
But
just
no
one of
one's
those things,
injured,
isn't it?
so we're sweet.
Yeah, that's the main thing, mate. That's the main thing. So I've talked about the FA Cup semi-finals. I've talked about the Championship and Cardiff. I want to ask you very quickly about the United. Obviously played against Brighton. I was just talking about Brighton. Brighton have got a decision to make in the summer, mate, haven't they? Whether they stick to this, they're kind of the way they go about things, where they find a gem, he plays for them, he builds a reputation, and then they sell him on for big money. Because this summer, the Premier League is going to be mental, because Liverpool and Chelsea are not going to be as bad as they were. West Ham are not going to be as bad as they were. You know, if Leicester, Everton, they stay up, they're not going to be as bad as they were. Newcastle, if they get Championship League football, they could spend an absolute fortune. Arsenal are going to spend money. Man City will strengthen, even though they've been, they're going to be successful. United are going to strengthen. So all of a sudden, it's going to be very, very difficult next year. And it'll be made even more difficult if Brighton sell Caicedo, McAllister, Evan Ferguson. Like, eventually, the law of averages states that one of these players, like midfield replacements that they keep signing and finding, one of them will eventually fail.
Yeah, but just to start off with, I am not Cardiff City chairman, but
no, sorry, mate, I'll change that now.
And that's the model at the minute. It's working. We've got good recruitment. Caicedo, he's not going to be there next year. I know that for sure.
But he's going to go for massive money, mate, because they turned down 40 for him.
Give him a new contract as well, haven't they?
Yeah.
So they're not daft. So, yeah, you'd expect him to go for 70, 80 million. It's crazy.
Yeah, at least, mate. At least he'll go for that. Will says, get a neck brace on and use this video to get your claim in. Glad you're all right, though.
Yeah, I said to the guy, I'm not injured or anything, blah, blah, blah. And then I got laid down before. I was like, oh, my back. Just
it takes time, mate, sometimes to because you got the shock and the adrenaline and stuff. And
but no, sweet.
Were you impressed with Brighton on Sunday, mate? The way they played United? I just said I thought Brighton were the better team, but I thought United managed the occasion better, if that makes sense.
Yeah, perfectly put. But they still didn't lose really. They lost on penalties, and there were some good penalties. Marsh just take the kids all the time, just lean back, and that's what happens. But I felt sorry for him because he had a good game in, and it's a shame it always ends like that, because it was a decent game, but Brighton did play their part, and good experience for him. See how they go on from there. Yeah,
I hope they can push on, mate. And they've got a good shout at getting 5th, maybe even Champions League football still, because they've got 3 games in hand. If they were to win them, they're right up to 2 points behind United as it stands. But United have obviously got a couple of games. They would go ahead of Spurs in 5th. So I mean, they've got plenty to play for. Villa got plenty to play for. They both hit form at the right time of the season.
It'll be a good game Saturday. We play Villa Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, Villa, I think Emery is one of the best managers in Europe in the Premier League. I think he's a phenomenal manager. I thought he should have got more time at Arsenal, but that's another story. We'll talk about Arsenal in just a sec, mate. I'll go on. We'll talk about Arsenal first, because I want to talk about United and the Glazers and everything kind of all in one. The one thing just before Arsenal, the one thing which impresses me about Man City at the moment is that because they've got such depth in their squad, whoever they bring in, whoever they move players around to different positions, they bring in their reserves, whoever plays, they still play the same way, which means that it doesn't unsettle the team. Whereas you look at United, as soon as they bring on the subs and the second string, they all go to pieces, because they can't play the same intensity and the same quality that they play when they've got Eriksen, Bruno and Casemiro together in the middle. They can't play with the same quality when they've got Rashford through the middle and Sancho on the left and the rest of it.
That's why
go on, mate.
Well, that's why he's been punching above his weight and doing pretty good with probably the same players. Yes, he's got 3 or 4 new additions, but it's still them same players, and that's the same players that we need to get rid of.
They've run him into the ground, mate, as well. That first 12.
No,
12
I believe I'm totally wrong. I was at the start of the season because that Malacia, oh my God,
But
he's
so
bad.
Right, very quickly, because I want to talk about Arsenal, Man City first. But with Malacia, he's a young player, and I think the first half of the season, he showed enough that there's a player in there, and maybe where he hasn't played as regularly since Shaw's been outstanding, maybe he's just finding it a bit difficult to find a pace. Positionally, mind, he was being awful in the Seville first leg and the Tottenham game last night, and he's cost United points, unfortunately. But he is a young player, and I think he's shown enough that maybe you stick with him as a backup for now. I will say
Fred as well. Oh my,
Fred's got to go, mate. And I said to you a few weeks ago that
I don't think he'd pass to a red shirt.
No. Do you know the only reason I think McTominay goes before him is because they get so much more money for McTominay because he's a homegrown player. I actually think if that wasn't the case, because if they sell McTominay, it helps them with financial fair play, whereas if they sell Fred, it doesn't. So, that's the only reason. I think otherwise they would keep McTominay over Fred. But anyway, we'll go back to United in a minute because there's a bit more to talk about with them. Arsenal-Man City game was in midweek. What a performance by Manchester City, first and foremost, before I get onto Arsenal. I thought Manchester City, you could tell within minutes, they were there to make a point. They were there to really kind of stamp their authority on the game.
Well, you said Arsenal were going to win the league. I said
no, mate, I said Arsenal were going to bottle it.
No,
I've been saying that since the start of the season. I did start to get a bit nervous, and I was thinking, well, maybe they're not going to. But so I know you slightly disagree with me in that I think they've bottled it. You think, from what I can gather the other day, they're a young team. They've probably overachieved a little bit. But where they were, the position they were in, the form they were in, it should not be in Manchester City's hands now. The last 4 games.
Remember when we talked about the Liverpool game? This is the game. If they win this, and this is the acid test. And they were 2-0 up. And if they win that one, they go on. So yeah. I think that to have gone a bit of a roll, but that was the key there. They were 2-0 up, drawn back to 2-2, and it started from that.
So what was it? They were 2-0 up against Liverpool, wasn't it? They were 2-0 up against West Ham, was it?
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, so that's right. Yeah, so they were 2-0 up against Liverpool, drew 2-2. They were 2-0 up against West Ham, drew 2-2. Then they were 2-0 down against Southampton and got it back to 3-3. Great, good performance, but Southampton, bottom of the league, should have been beating them. And then Man City, it was men against boys, mate, on Wednesday or Tuesday. It really was men against boys. They just absolutely decimated them. And if it wasn't for Ramsdale, it would have been about 5-6-0 at halftime because they had so many clear-cut chances. I think he kept Haaland out a few times in the first half. They cleared one off the line. On another day, they go in and it's embarrassing. 4-1 is a heavy defeat. And it was this was billed as the title decider. All the rest of it. You had Arsenal fans, people like Martin Keown saying, these boys are winners. They're not winners. They haven't won anything. And they're not winners yet. Have they overachieved? Yes. Have they had a great season? Yes. Did we expect them to be where they are? No. I accept all that. Unfortunately for Arsenal, when you're talking about it on a podcast and things like this, I think the thing which puts people off is their Arsenal fan TV and stuff like that kind of rubs people the wrong way. They get so excited about the highs and they go so low about the lows. But talk to me about Kevin De Bruyne, mate. He's a special, special player. I know you don't like to talk about Man City players, but as a football fan, he is something to behold, isn't he?
Yeah, he's unbelievable player. That first goal. Just the way he passes, the way he crosses the ball. Yeah, by far the best midfielder in the league.
Is he in the same stratosphere as Messi, Ronaldo, etc. over the last, say, 3 or 4 years?
No. He scored 40 goals a season for like 15 years.
Okay, next question. Erling Haaland has scored 49 goals in all competition. Is he in the same bracket as them two?
Again, they did it for 10 to 15 years.
Okay.
He's done it for 1 year. Let's see next year how the people, because people look at it in the summer, in the pre-season, but people aren't just twiddling their thumbs. They look at other teams and look at the dangers and look at and how do we deal with him? How do we deal with this guy? If he scores the same amount or next year or 40 plus, then you can start putting him in the bracket. But at the minute, he's well on track.
Do you think Arsenal
because Messi and Ronaldo didn't do that at such a young age?
Yeah, it took them a while to get going, didn't it?
Yeah.
So, do you think Arsenal and Arteta played into Manchester City's hands? I do.
They just didn't play well.
Like the goal.
Man City are on an absolute roll at the minute.
Yeah. Oh, of course. And they've got the experience. They're used to churning out these performances.
This is where you've got time. Yeah, this is where you've got to mix up. Try a long ball. Well, try something different.
But this is where I think. Go on.
Yeah, but they did it and they scored from it. Boom, long ball, Haaland touch, De Bruyne, boom, goal.
And this is what I was going to say. I thought Arsenal were a little bit naive. They let City sucker them in for that goal. Like City purposely took it into the corner from, I think it was a goal kick. Or it might have been a free kick, but they kind of purposely took it into the corner to almost sucker Arsenal into like thinking, oh, we've got him here. We're going to press and win the ball. And then it was just bump, one ball. Haaland completely just turns holding, too strong for him. And he's away. And it's a great finish and the rest of it. But I thought, look, I would say Arsenal probably need a backup for Saliba because without him, they do not look the same at the back. Like they don't have the same organisation. Not the only ones, man. There's a few teams in the league when they lose their main centre-back, they struggle a little bit more. But it's up to the manager to address that now, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. But it's still a long way to go. But if you look at the fixtures and you look how City are playing, this is it's Championship round time. And
worried about the treble.
Got the T-shirt the last 2 years.
Mm.
So, yeah.
You're worried about the treble because I think, as it stands, the way United seem to be crumbling whenever they make a sub.
If they win the Champions League, then they'll win the treble, yeah.
Because I think United can't play the same 11 players constantly, and and as soon as they make a change, they struggle.
Yeah. And
the thing I saw, I can't remember who it was. I think it might have been one of the idiots off Talk Sport saying, "Oh, Real Madrid, Benzema's getting old and this," and he was trying to make out that Real Madrid had got this really old team. And I was like, mate, Kavinga's 20 and he's won everything. And it's like
Vinicius.
Yeah, Vinicius, 19, 20, something like that. Even Asensio, who comes off the bench, is 27 or something.
Yeah, it's just bitter blues, isn't it?
I do think, however,
when we won the treble, we won a team with Fat Ronaldo in it. The other in the semi-finals, a team with Del Piero, Zidane, Inzaghi, Edgar Davids. So these are top teams. Modric, is he on Zidane's level? No. So and then there's Ronaldo. We played top teams. They've played some good. Mind you, that Bayern Munich team's a very good team. They just didn't perform on the two nights.
I think there was also something to the fact they sacked their manager like 2 weeks before that tie, didn't they? Which was
what I'm talking about.
Such a weird one.
They had stalwart players. These are marquee players who were playing against that Juventus team in 98, 99. They were the team to beat.
Yeah, and So I'm trying to. I want to quickly have a look at the Madrid side. They've been linked heavily with Jude Bellingham, by the way, this week. Harry Redknapp did Beyond the Pitch podcast with Phil, and he said he's heard from someone close to Bellingham that he wants Madrid move. Whether I don't know whether it'll come off and that, but I could see that. I could see the logic behind it from both sides.
If I was in, that'd be my move.
Yeah,
I wouldn't want no part of the Premier League.
Well,
that's a lie. But I would because I would end up at the Premier League. So, but I would go to Spain, go to play on the Real Madrid there. It's up for grabs every year, everything, and you're playing at the Bernabeu for Real Madrid, and you'd be the number one guy, centre midfielder, and you could be there for like 5-10 years. He's like, what, 18, 19?
It's mental, isn't it?
Yeah, so come back in what they say back in the day that your prime was 28, 29. So he comes back to the Premier League in his prime with a big, massive contract after earning 100-odd million at Real Madrid. I mean, that have you ever been to the Bernabeu, mate?
No, I haven't. No, I've been to the Barcelona stadium. I haven't been to
the Bernabeu, someplace. Been there 3 times. It's someplace. The noise of it, it's proper like an old concrete. You know what it reminds me of when I seen it? The old Arms Park.
Yeah. I can see that. Just with the stone.
It reminds me of that. We remember sat outside, me and my mate, for the first time. I remember we sat outside the park and we're looking at it and we're just going, can you believe we're outside the Bernabeu? Well, I can't remember how old we were. Can you believe it? Look at it. And we just stood there, sat there, just looking at it for about 5-10 minutes. It was mint.
It's interesting with Madrid. They rested quite a few players in the week. They rested Camavinga. They rested the right back Vasquez. They rested Tchouaméni. So they rested a few players, but they lost. But their league is kind of gone for them, I think. I think Barcelona have kind of got it sewn up. So they're going to focus all their attention on...
Makes sense, doesn't it?
All the attention on that Man City.
I think City are going to roll these over. Not to roll it over. They've got it in the favour because the last game is at home. But, you don't want to go home without a positive result. Because Real Madrid, they're no mugs. They can catch you on the break. All it takes is a mad 5 minutes and you could be 2 or 3-0 down and then you're up against it, whoever you are.
Madrid's rotated midfield was that Valverde, Kroos and Modric. So, I mean, that tells you all you need to know about the strength and depth they've got. They had Rodrigo through the middle, who's been quality this year.
You got that Vinicius, who gave Kyle Walker a torrid time last year.
Asensio, and obviously they've got Benzema and the rest of them. I'm interested by their defence because you've got, obviously, Haaland is the guy at the moment. They've got Militao, is it pronounced, and Rudiger as the centre-backs. Both good athletes. I was never convinced by Rudiger in the Premier League, but every time I've seen him play for Madrid, he's been...
he's one of them defenders that I would hate to play against. He's just all over you. Just constantly all over you.
But do you think Haaland likes that?
Or when they've got the ball, I'd rather he had it, and then I know we're going to get it back. But defending, he's one of them, he's like a rash all over you.
But do you think, for a striker like Haaland, he wants that touch type defender so he can roll?
You can't do that with him. He's too big. He'll just
roll you, won't he?
Yeah, get off.
So it's going to be fascinating, mate. Do you think Man City win over two legs, or do you think they'll slip up?
My heart says,
please God, Real Madrid.
Real Madrid will win. My head says City will probably do it this year. I remember United when they first got into Europe. It took them 4 or 5 years. I've touched on this before last week that they got beat up. They got beat up for Borussia Dortmund with a Paul Lambert in the midfield in a semi-final. So, and then a Bayer Leverkusen with a Berbatov up front the year after or the year before, and then but they were getting closer and closer and closer. And then '99 they won it. Yeah, I think City are on the right track, and this is probably their best year.
I think this is their absolute best chance, because if they can beat Madrid over 2 legs, with the home leg, the second leg, the form they're in, Haaland scoring goals, if they can get past Madrid, you'd fancy them to beat either Milan side in a one-off game, I think. So this is their chance, because, like we mentioned earlier, everybody's going to be stronger next year. So, yeah, it's going to be a fascinating one, mate. Really fascinating. So I've saved United to the last few, mate, for a few reasons. Obviously, today is the deadline for the Glazers. I don't know. I can't even remember if we've discussed what your preference is in regards to Sir Jim Ratcliffe or the Qatari bid. But there was a big story this week that basically Jim Ratcliffe has said to the Glazers that he'll buy 51% and then he'll allow them to keep 20% and keep them on board. This has obviously absolutely enraged United fans, because they feel like he's kind of sold them down the river a bit. He gave it the big, I'm Manchester born, I'm Manchester bred, blah, 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 blah. And then it looks like he's going to saddle them with more, with debt, even though it's going to be through a separate company. And he's going to keep the Glazers on board. Were you surprised to see that story?
Who's that? That was Jim Ratcliffe on it?
Ratcliffe, yeah.
Yeah, that's not going to go down well.
Well, mate, do you know, I wonder whether they might try and keep this deadline bid thing, which is today, quiet, because you've got the protest at the Villa game on Saturday. And if it comes out, say he has been successful with that as his plan, and that he's going to win the bid and he's going to take over, but he's going to keep the Glazers, that protest is going to go up another 10 notches. Like, it's already going to be quite vitriolic. If you add in the fact that he's keeping the Glazers around, it could get nasty, mate. So it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think there's no such thing as a perfect owner. There's just not. There's always going to be something. And also, these billionaires who can afford to buy a club the size of Manchester United or Liverpool or Chelsea, right? People who've got that much money, they're not going to be morally. There's always going to be something around them, whether it's like whatever it may be. There's always going to be something around those people. Someone's going to not agree with something. I see a lot of people on like social media and podcasts and stuff saying they'd prefer the Qatar bid, not because they necessarily want to be owned by the Qataris, but because they're debt free and they're going to pay off all the debt. And I think I see a lot of football fans from other football clubs saying, I don't know what United fans are moaning about. The Glazers have spent, you've spent X amount of money on transfers over the last few years. But it's not about that. It's about the amount of money that they take out year after year. It's like United are in so much debt.
And yes, they're investing, but they're not investing in the infrastructure. Look at what's going on over at City. Our training ground is a joke. The pitch, the ground.
Stadium's falling apart, mate.
It's a joke. The infrastructure, people, to go on to be better. I mean, look at Tottenham now. Tottenham have got up-to-date stadium, and the training ground is like up-to-date as well, where the players have got their own rooms if they want to stay there. I mean, that's how up-to-date it is. I think Jose Mourinho was actually living there when he was manager there. That's how good it was. So, and United have been the same one for, I don't know how long they've been in, as long as I can remember anyway. So, and it's in the middle of nowhere. They've got ground all around Old Trafford. Could have done that years ago. Instead, every year, 15, 20 million or whatever it is, taken out of the club and put in their coffers.
Yeah. I think it's disgraceful that any owner can do that to any football club. I really do.
They took the debt out of 560 odd million. I think the debt now, today, 20 odd years later, is 580 million or something.
Yeah, and when you add in money that they owe for transfers and stuff like that, it is $1 billion that they owe in debt. And like, no football club should be $1 billion in debt. Like, I understand that football clubs at the highest level, they're going to have some sort of debt and credit and stuff. But, like, I don't think that any club should be put in that position whereby it's just, like, unless you can get, like, a Qatar to come in, pay off that debt, pay off another couple of billion on transfers and a couple of billion on stadium and stuff like that. Like, realistically, there isn't that many billionaires who are going to do that. So, like, what are we saying? That, you know, football clubs just, like, it frustrates me, mate. On the pitch, some good news for you is that Garnacho has signed a new 5-year deal, officially announced today. I think that is probably a weight off your mind, just in terms of he'd had a lot of people sniffing around him, taking a bit of time to go, you know, to get done. Unfortunately, Garnacho is going to be back anytime soon, and it looks like he's going straight to the Under-20 World Cup. Where do you stand on that? Do you think he should go?
Yeah. Good experience.
Yeah, and I think he hasn't made his first team debut, has he, for Argentina? So it's not like he's they're sort of wiggling the system.
He was on the cuffs of the World Cup, wasn't
he? Yeah, I think he would have. I think he was. Yeah, he was like nearly. Few comments on the finances of football. Gav Randall says most owners are in it for the money, not passion. 100%. Will says football finances need to be properly regulated like banks are. Today it's basically just a money laundering at the highest level. And Gavin says no club should be in debt. You've got the money to buy it. Surely you should stay out of debt. But it just seems like all clubs just do it. I don't know. It's difficult, but like maybe that's right. Maybe no club should be in debt. Maybe it's. But then is that too idealistic to say that?
You say that, you can say no person should be in debt, but everyone's got a mortgage, so
yeah. But it should always be manageable, shouldn't it?
Yeah,
and if it's regulated,
exactly. It shouldn't be 20 years on, and the debt that you took on to take the club is higher.
Yeah, of course it should be lower.
Yeah, you're rinsing 20, 30 million every year.
Yeah, and I mean, make no mistake, the only reason why the Glazers are selling now is because of COVID. They cannot take the money out anymore. That's the only reason they're selling. They're not selling because the fans have protests and so they didn't give a shit about that. They don't care about that. They're in America. They don't give two shits about that. What the reason they are selling is because the club can no longer afford to pay them dividends of 20, 30 million, whatever it is per year, whatever they were taking out. They can't afford to do it anymore because of COVID and the profits of. Whereas United always used to be like profit was massive, wasn't it? Whereas the profit and the losses have come so much more closer together, they can't afford to do it, and that's the only reason they're selling. It'll be interesting how that develops, mate. Listen, United played Tottenham last night. I thought first half United were spot on. I thought Christian Eriksen was quality. I thought Fernandes was good. I thought Jadon Sancho was quality. But they just, after half time, they just looked like in their heads, they thought the job was done. The subs harmed them. I thought taking Aaron Wan-Bissaka off was a weird one because he defensively is better than Dalot is, and Dalot was out of position for the Son goal. Malacia came on, and then he was out of position for the I think that was the Son goal as well. It's it's a weird one. And I think it shows, like you said earlier, Ten Hag has worked wonders with pretty much the same squad that has failed for. I think I said last week actually. It's the same players who've thrown numerous managers under the bus. It is when you bring those players in that the team struggles. They can't keep up the same quality and intensity. Before we talk about the negatives, I thought Luke Shaw and Jadon Sancho were absolutely excellent for the whole time they were on the football pitch. I thought Lindelof was pretty good. I thought Wan-Bissaka was good. I thought De Gea was good until they made the subs, and then he looked a bit shaky. But apart from that, I thought he was decent. Rashford looked better than he has done since he's come back from injury. So there was some positives, but I think it does show that Ten Hag is overachieving with the players he's got. But he's, if they back him in the summer, I don't think you need like 10 players. I think you need to move 3, 4, 5 out and get the same in, but better quality or players he wants. And I think that'll be a good start.
No, like I say before, touched on before, punching above the weight, he's done better than, a month ago. He was going for all four cups. Yes, we're not going to win 2 of them, but we're in the conversation, and that was, this time last year, it was shocking. It's all doom and gloom. So you're on the right track. Got another cup final to look forward to against City, which will be tough, but it's something to look forward to. And we've got 4 or 5 games left to see out the season and secure that 4th spot.
If United don't make top 4, I think it would be a shock, and it would be a big capitulation because they got a couple of games in hand. Pretty much, I think if they beat Villa on Sunday, that's top 4 done.
Yeah.
But if they'd won yesterday, I think it was conceivable that them and Newcastle could both catch Arsenal if Arsenal's form continues to falter and get second. So from that point of view, it's disappointing. It's like, look, Spurs are a top 6, whatever side. So a draw beforehand wasn't the worst result. But when you are 2-0 up and cruising, could have been 3-4, to then make those errors, I think that's where the problem lies, isn't it? And that's where it's a bad result. Quick question for you, mate. Harry Kane was playing effectively in midfield second half. One of the reasons why I said to you I don't necessarily think that he's the best pick for United is because he drops too deep, and that's not what they need. Were you surprised at how deep he was? Because he did change the game, like, ultimately.
No, he's obviously experienced enough now to affect the game when he needs to, and that's what he needed to affect the game. So he's got to drop deeper to get on the ball more and try and affect the game, which he did.
Yeah. It's actually, I think Ryan Mason, the manager, was quite clever. He told Dyer to push into midfield and he told Kane to drop into midfield, which meant now they outnumbered United, whereas United had control in the first half and they were playing at will. So I thought that was quite clever from Ryan Mason.
We have a chance from Bruno that could finish it off.
If he takes that, it's all over, isn't it? Because it would have been 3-1, they would have been deflated.
Burst the bubble, and they would have seen it out.
I also shout out to Nico Williams, whose season is over. He broke his jaw last night, clashing with his own player, I think. But was it Brennan Johnson? Yeah. Oh, Jesus. Let's talk about Newcastle, mate, quickly before we finish up. Absolutely on fire. I said to you at the start of the season, did you think they could get Champions League this early on, like as in this season? You said it might take a bit of time. Eddie Howe's doing a tremendous job, and he's exceeding where they are, where I think they would have planned to be now.
Oh yeah, again, they're punching above the weight as well and done fantastically well. Because everyone would thought, oh, here comes the cash, splash the cash, blah, blah, blah. But no, they've been pragmatic. They've not rushed into anything, and they seem to have a clear plan. And players know what they're doing, and they've got good quality as well, sprinkled around there. So, yeah,
Alexander Isak has been a phenomenal signing, and
60 million though, it's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money, but I think he's
worth it. Yeah,
he's backed it up absolutely.
You've got Callum Wilson, you've got that Bruno, you've obviously got Trippier, the back forward, a fantastic Pope's doing well.
Yeah, so, Nick Pope's a good goalkeeper. Yeah, they've got a good basis now to go and push on.
Amaron. Yes, they've got some Maximum can show up, so they've got some good players.
I heard a rumour about Newcastle today. So when the Saudis took over, they wanted to move Newcastle's training ground to Manchester because of the temperature and everything to do with Newcastle. Obviously, it got a bit of pushback from fans.
Yeah.
So they put it on the back burner, but apparently it's still on the cards in the background. Basically, the plan would be move the training ground to Manchester, which is a bit more hospitable in terms of sign-ins and stuff like that. And then they just fly out so the players could live in the Manchester and Cheshire and stuff. And then they just fly out to Newcastle for the games. I don't think fans will like it. But ultimately, when you think of that, I don't think it makes that much difference. Because fans don't go to the training games. So, to training. So, they're not moving the football club from Newcastle. The games are still going to be in St. James's Park. It's just that they feel to sign the very best players with the money they've got, and if they get Champions League football, that it may be beneficial to say to those players, you can live where all the Liverpool players live, and because they all live around Cheshire, don't they? And Liverpool, a lot of Liverpool players live sort of by Manchester and that. So, could you see that happening?
Nothing would surprise me, but it'd be a weird one, especially with Newcastle, how they are with a team, and they were it's playing for teams like Newcastle. Yeah, people see you around the city, and I just don't see it. Don't see it.
What about Aston Villa, mate?
It's a good idea though, because I understand.
It's a good idea.
I understand what you're saying. The winter months, the cold, it's freezing up there. I mean, it's freezing. I know it's not so great up here, but it's not as cold up there. It's freezing. Every time I've gone up there, I've got frostbite. It's minging.
And I think as well, mate, is if they lose out on a couple of players because of where Newcastle is logistically, they will do it.
It's amazing, isn't it? Back in the day, it was, I'm not coming to Manchester, live in London. But now everyone wants to live in Cheshire.
Yeah. Well,
the Ponces.
So, last thing, Villa, mate. Have you been surprised by the job that Emery has done there?
Who?
Unai Emery at Villa.
Oh, mate, he's a good manager. Touched on this before. He's a good manager. He's won the Europa League several. Quiet. The Europa League several times. So, yeah, he's a good manager, mate. Very good manager. He's managing the Premier League before with Arsenal. He's got experience there. So, yeah, he's a very good manager.
Any chance Villa nick Manchester United's Champions League spot?
No.
6-point gap, but United have got 2 games in hand. So I think that's where...
Well, theoretically, it's 12 points. No.
If they win the games in hand. And obviously they play Villa Sunday as well.
Got more chance of Cardiff City fighting for the title next year. That's if they survive this year.
Mate, I'd agree with that. No, they only need a point now. You missed the start of the show, didn't you?
There you go.
Come on, bro. Little quick question, mate. Couple of questions. Everton, they're in big trouble, mate.
Yeah.
So I said at the start of the show, I talked about Cardiff
as well.
Yeah, well, I talked Cardiff at the start of the show, and what I said is Cardiff need a point to be safe. And I said, as soon as they get that point, the board have got to say, right, if this is our manager, this is our guy, and they've got to back him. They've got to make decisions on the loans, the young players, blah, blah, blah. But they've got to do it early, and they've got to get it done. Because if you keep flirting with relegation, eventually it catches up with you. And I used Everton as an example. Everton have escaped relegation on the last week or two of the season, the last 2 seasons. I don't think they're going to survive this year because I look at it. Forest are finding a bit of form. Leeds are kind of capable of getting results. West Ham have found form. Bournemouth found form. Wolves, Palace. it's really, to me, it's Leicester, Everton, Southampton, and probably Leeds, maybe Forest at a push, who are kind of in that mix. And I look at the form, and Southampton and Everton, their form compared to everyone else's is way worse. And I thought Everton against Newcastle looked mentally shot. They looked like a team who were like, shit, we're going down this year. As opposed to the last couple of seasons, they've got into these final few games fighting, and that like that attitude you get where teams at the bottom towards the end of the league, at the end of the season, they just look like they're going to find a way to get a result or an equalizer, or they just don't seem to have that. And I'm surprised because I thought Sean Dyche would be the guy who would get that from them. But they got problems, mate. Big problems.
Yeah, and deep doo-doo.
So at the moment, you've got Tottenham fans protesting Levy, Everton fans protesting Kenwright, United fans protesting the Glazers. Anyone else? I'm sure there's another one as well. All these chairmen, mate, under pressure. Out of all of them, which one do you think is under the most pressure from the fans?
Everton.
You think Everton are because of the
can't go to the ground, mate. How many chairmen can't go to the ground?
Yeah, that's true.
I've been to the ground for like 2 months.
Yeah, that's a problem, isn't it?
You know shit.
What happens if Everton go down, mate? What happens to their new stadium?
You own something, you can't even go there. No, shit, that's a problem.
So what happens if Everton go down? Like, what happens with their...
They haven't been relegated since the 1950s either.
What happens with their new stadium?
I don't know.
Haven't they got... I thought that was all... I don't know how far along it is.
It's done. It'll be done next year, so it's on its way to being built. So...
Nice, shiny new stadium to get relegated from the Championship into League One.
Yeah. Well, if they keep Sean Dyche, we've got a good chance.
Yeah, you'd back them, wouldn't you, with the money that they got and the money that they'll get from parachute payments and Sean Dyche.
Yeah.
And that's if they don't sack him. They've got to stick with him, surely.
Got experienced players who've been in that. Tarkowski, O'Neill, Keane, they've all been in the Championship.
You'd be stupid to get relegated to the Championship and then sack Sean Dyche, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Because like teams like Cardiff and the rest, all the others who are gonna, if they were to part ways with their manager at any point, Sean Dyche is going to be right up high up on their list of managers who's going to take over. So yeah, it would be ridiculous. Right, let's quickly do our predictions. I nearly forgot.
I fall asleep,
You fall asleep with your whiplash. With your whiplash. Sorry, mate. Just phone's slow, man. So, what's the plans for the weekend then, mate? Golfing?
No. Ethan's got a game tomorrow. Then chill. And then Sunday I've got a game for the All-Stars.
Go on. Where's that to?
What?
Where's that to?
Leeds. Some charity Rob Burrow. No, the rugby player.
Yeah.
Yeah, mate.
Do you know what do we do? Yeah, if we win against.
Just give me a minute, mate. Just give me a minute. We'll finish in a minute. We'll talk to me then.
Literally, we'll be finished now, Ethan. Just 2 seconds. Yeah. I'll give you your dad back then. Right, Brighton versus Wolves at Brighton.
2-1 Brighton.
Yeah, I've gone 2-1 Brighton as well, although Wolves are in good form. Brentford Forest, I've gone 2-1 Brentford.
Brentford Forest. Brentford 1-0. No, 3-1.
Fulham versus Manchester City at Fulham. 4-1 City, I gone.
2-0.
United at home to Villa. I've gone 2-0 United. I have, just because every time Ten Hag has slipped up, they always come back with a strong
2-1 United.
Newcastle home to Southampton.
3-0.
That's what I've got. And Liverpool versus Spurs
Where at?
at Anfield. They found a bit of form suddenly, haven't they, Liverpool? They owe their fans a
3-1.
massive apology.
3-1 Liverpool.
Liverpool being a disgrace this year, and they owe their fans an apology.
Yeah, Liverpool. Chelsea. Yeah.
I've gone 3-1 Liverpool. And I know, like, people think that I'm just saying it because I don't like Liverpool, but, mate, the way they've picked and choosed where they've turned up has been embarrassing this year.
No.
But there we go. It's such is life. As always, mate, a pleasure. Hope the back and the neck doesn't stiffen up overnight.
Next
not
week,
too painful.
back, the lower back. That'll be sweet. We'll have a nice Radox bath now after I've gone and get my food.
That's the way, mate. We'll be back on Thursday, 9 o'clock next week, innit? Because there's no football on Thursdays now. So sweet. All right. Nice one, mate.
All right, mate.
Speak to you soon. Nice one to everyone who's tuned in. Laters.